Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out. Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out. Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out.
Hey folks, this is Dave. Welcome to Two Middle-Aged Guys Trying to Work It All Out. With me, as always, is my good friend,
Chris.
Well, thanks for joining us today. We've got a fun topic, a lighter topic, maybe, from the thing we talked about last week. Chris, if you don't mind, I would like to institute a ban on talking about The Acolyte. Maybe just for this episode, maybe we can extend it. Like a rolling thing that we, in committee, will bring to the TMAG committee. But let's just, for today, let's keep it light and fun and not speak of that show.
I can agree with that and reserve the right to revisit at a future date.
Yeah, just a future date, not today. But I do have several observations about The Acolyte I'd like to just don't launch into. But no, I'm just joking.
You just said you made a proclamation.
I know. We got a fun episode today. This is a fun episode. I think talking about something that listen, if you're middle-aged, even if you're not middle-aged, I mean, that's kind of the point of this, this is something we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about, if you read the podcast title, we're talking about the Nintendo Wii, which is just, I think, pure joy, pure fun, and really excited to talk about that. Before we get into it, though, I'd like to talk about, Chris, if you don't mind, two movies that I watched, a brand new one and an old one that I revisited, and provide some observations on those, if you don't mind.
That's perfectly fine. I have an observation about a movie that I watched as well. So,
all right, so I'm going to start with the new movie I went and saw. Went to the theaters, paid the theater prices, $33, $36 for popcorn and a soda and tip. So it was a nearly $70 trip to the theaters. Yes, I just put that in memory because it's so darn expensive to go to the movies. Went and saw, I know, and by the way, it's an old hacky thing to joke about, but truly it has gotten to the point where I only go for like event movies, but we decided to not go to an event movie. We went and saw the new Austin Butler, Tom Hardy motorcycle film, The Bike Riders. It clarifies in the trailer that this is not about people riding Schwinns. It's a motorcycle movie, very Marlon Brando, sort of throwback. And I gotta say, I love this movie. It is a slow burn, and it is a character movie. And I gotta say, at first you're gonna kind of leave, you're gonna be a little head scratching about what did I just watch here, and then you're gonna process it, and you'll be like, oh, I get it. I get the story that they're telling, because it's not straightforward. It's it's not that it's just simply it's non-linear in some ways, but it's just a complicated story about complicated people. Great action. Austin Butler is, man, that guy can act. I know I gave him a hard time for some of the choices in Dune, which were not his choices. I'm talking about the prosthetics and the weird, Billy Corgan getup he was wearing. That fella can act. And then, of course, Tom Hardy. Everybody knows Tom Hardy's Tom Hardy, right? I mean, he can choose to show up or not, right? He can just, have mediocre performances. He showed up. And so if you like, this movie's got some action in it. This movie's set in the 60s and early 70s, and it deals with the culture at the time and the changing culture, and, what could be a bad guy and how they could be perceived at one point, and then when other truly worse guys come into the picture, how other guys react to it. It's kind of hard to say, but kind of hard to explain. But, the shift in the culture in the 60s and 70s is explored, and it's explored through the view of people who ride bikes, but motorbikes, not Schwinns. So that I was disappointed. I was really excited to see some Schwinns baseball cards in the spokes with Austin Butler and Tom Hardy cycling as hard as they could. But no, these were motorized bikes. So I would have called it the Motorized Bike Riders, just to clarify that for the audience. But
that may be why they don't let you make films.
That's exactly why they don't let me make films. Long, complicated titles. It always about Schwinns. Great movie. Funny that we spent all that. We went to the theater, got home, fired up Voodoo, and it was at the theater at home. It had just came that same day. And I'm like, gosh darn it. Because as great as as the movie is, and there's some sound design that is good with the motorcycles, but I got a decent home theater. I got, a sub. I've got a Sonos system all around. Good sub. I mean, honestly, I would have enjoyed it just as much as home, and I would have saved $50. So I was a little kicking myself for that. But I got to say, check the movie out. It really is good. But be prepared. It's a little slow. It's a slow burn, and there will be moments where you're like, am I who am I rooting for here? And what's the message? But the message does become clear. You got to watch the whole film because it's not a simple movie.
So, question about this then, because I don't know much about it. I knew it was coming out, but that's pretty much it. But how similar is it to Easy Rider? Because that was kind of the impression I was getting from it.
Easy Rider is referenced in the movie in a very funny way. Never watched Easy Rider all the way through. I've seen clips. So, I need to. I've got to watch it now because I enjoyed this and I enjoyed that culture. I think that what it's trying to do, without giving too much away, is show people who are trying to be like that and what the reality was of that. It's actually the framing device of the movie. And they let you know this within, the moment one is there's a photojournalist following them, and that's how the story is told, is he's trying to build this picture of this. But I think it's the reality of what that biker life is versus the sort of Easy Rider that sort of that wasn't real. Very few people were like it, and the people who truly were like that, and they do show those folks in the movies, and one character in particular, played by the gentleman in The Walking Dead who's Daryl, Norman Reedus, who is a very good actor, but only plays motorcycle guys. They show that that's a pretty miserable life, right? There's a contrast between the fantasy of Easy Rider and some of the other biker movies, but it's inspired by the Marlon Brando type biker, but then the reality of the Easy Rider type biker comes in. Man, it's a good movie. It's a watch. It's definitely a watch.
All right. Very good.
Do you mind if I talk about my other one? You go ahead with yours, and then I'll come back around with my other one. It's much shorter.
All right. Well, mine was just an observation I made yesterday, and kind of I wanted to give a public service announcement to you and to any of our listeners, because if you're listening to this podcast, you are going to care about what I'm about to say. But my wife and I were flipping through the streaming services looking for something to watch, and we were on Hulu, and we came across Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, which is one of my absolute favorite movies. Have not seen it in a while, so I was like, hey, how about Oh Brother? So I turned it on, and within 5 minutes, I had this feeling like something is not right. And I realized that Hulu is showing Oh Brother, Where Art Thou in the incorrect aspect ratio. Shame on them. I don't even know how they would have done it, because it's harder to get a movie in the incorrect aspect ratio than it is to get it in the correct aspect ratio. But gosh darn it, if you watch Oh Brother on Hulu, you are not getting the vision that the Coen brothers want you to get.
Is it filling up the full 16:9 frame?
It's full 69 instead of being 2:3:9:1.
It's funny, right? Like at one point, people were totally complaining about, there's bars, I can't see my full screen. Now we're like the thinnest picture possible, right? And there was actually an old Mad TV sketch about this. I don't know if you remember. It was Steven Seagal trying to explain widescreen to people, which is a pretty brilliant concept. From Mad TV is not known for brilliant, but it was Will Sasso doing Mad TV, showing ever widening aspect ratios and him beating people up through this procession of ever widening aspect ratios. Very funny. But that's interesting. Okay, so mine is connected to yours in a way. This is going to blow you away, because, folks, we did not talk about this. We said we got some stuff we want to talk about, but we leave it at that so that, there's a spontaneity to the show. We were flipping through and trying to find a movie to watch, and I decided to give this film a chance, because I had seen this film before, but really did not like it as much as everyone else in the world or appreciate it. But I decided to watch The Big Lebowski.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I had never appreciated this movie. I had a couple of issues with it, and I will go back because I still haven't made peace totally with all of them, or one of them specifically. And now I get it. I get the dude thing. I get the attraction to the film. I got to tell you, John Goodman his character and Steve Buscemi, those two characters make the movie. I mean, they're interspersed through the film is so brilliant. You just kind of wait for them to show up. I mean, John Goodman, like, angry, about having to work on the Sabbath, and even though he's not Jewish, but he explains why it still applies to him angrily, and then the nihilists show up, and John Goodman's character explaining the difference between Nazism and nihilism is maybe one of the funniest lines. I won't repeat it because gosh, brilliant writing, brilliant performance. My issue with the film is still the moments where the dude has these little weird magical realism moments and floats around on bowling alleys and everything. I think they overdid that. I think especially that last one, it was just too darn long. What Condition My Condition is in is playing, and he's rolling. He's rolling down the thing. But I gotta say, it's kind of funny that you and I both had, Coen brothers moments. Mine was a much more positive one.
I will advocate for Big Lebowski any point, and it is one of my favorite comedies. I dearly love that movie. You're absolutely right. John Goodman is so phenomenal in that film.
Oh my gosh.
It's so funny. Yeah.
Shut up! I mean,
there are rules.
Yeah. There are rules. You crossed the line. That's a foul. It's not a foul. They put me on Saturday. I have to say, if you've watched The Big Lebowski and you don't appreciate it like I did, watch it again but commit to sitting through it, watching it, piecing it together, and then the end where Buscemi, I mean, gosh, the whole deal with how they work with his eye. It's hilarious. And it's not like Kingpin. It's not some zany, crazy, filthy comedy. I will say there is bad language in the Big Lebowski. It's really, I mean, the language is kind of awful, but it's bad language, but it's not like, it's not obscene. It's just bad words sprinkled into, it's like, hey, you want to bowl? Except, there's 38 F words inside of a, hey, do you want to bowl? I just wanted to say, I revisit it. I got it. I'm now, I understand the Big Lebowski. I understand the dude. I understand why people think that character's so funny. I do think that Walter is the star of the movie. John Goodman was much better when he was fatter. The fatter John Goodman was, the funnier he was. Now he's just kind of disappearing. He's lost weight. Good for him.
Well, I'm sure he feels a lot better.
I'm sure he does, right? When they do Big Lebowski 2, it's going to be really weird, though, when he's not as heavy, and they're going to have to...
That will be weird. They'll work it into the script somehow. Maybe he did another tour with the Army or something, and it'll be
Wasn't he kicked out for 6 weeks? He was always talking about his time in Nam, and my buddies in Nam that did this, and now I got to put up with this. Oh, my goodness. Man, I tell you what, though, the nihilists and his explanation of nihilism, I have to say, the brilliant writing, and then not just having that thought is funny, but being able to construct that into a sentence and then getting an actor to say some of those things. Wow, Coen brothers, because I read there was very, very little improvisation.
Oh, yeah. Across any Coen brother movie, there's very little improvisation.
Man, those guys, I've not seen Buster Scruggs yet, but now this was like, I got to go see Buster Scruggs.
We should do a Coen brothers episode coming up soon.
Okay, sure. Now we'll just watch them all. I started with Big Lebowski. You started with a very screwed up version of Oh Brother, which is a brilliant film. I'm a Dapper Dan man.
Yeah.
They're really good at like one-liners.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The pleasant smell is half the point. I'm quite fond of my hair jelly. Anyway, but after I realized that Hulu had the wrong aspect ratio, we shut that off and I went and pulled my Blu-ray off the shelf. So everything was fine. But shame on Hulu.
And really, truly an argument for physical, right?
Yes, it is.
The physical media, because you have that option, whereas I would not. My option would be to find the service that presents it correctly and then buy that or subscribe to that, which, and you've always got it, right? The negative is that you're locked into your format, audio and video, whereas I can, continuously pay to upgrade and get my money multiple times. I don't think I'm making a case for myself.
All right, so I hear there's a game coming my way that I have to play that's going to be really hard.
Yes, so we started this episode by talking about something, we were going to talk about something fun and light. And we're talking about the Nintendo Wii. Chris, I want to challenge your Wii knowledge a little bit.
Okay.
This is just a kind of a basic challenge. I'm going to give you 3 Wii games, and I want to know if these 3 Wii games were part of the top 20 sellers.
Wow.
The Wii had many blockbusters, right? And I will tell you the top 4 games. I'm going to get it out of the way so you'll know. Inside the top 20, the top 4 were the pack-in games: Wii Sports, Mario Kart Wii, Wii Sports Resort, and New Super Mario Brothers Wii. So those are the pack-ins. That's part of the top 20. So consider that. So I'm going to give you 3 games and just tell me whether or not you think were these sellers, big sellers that made it into the top 20.
Okay, I'm ready.
Test your Wii knowledge just a little bit. Okay, the first one is Link's Crossbow Training. Was that a top 20 game?
I'm going to say no, it was not top 20.
It was 18.
Wow.
Remember that guy came with that little...
Yep, I remember.
It had the little dude, right? That was more of a technical demo.
Yeah.
That was not really a game.
So I knew it sold well. I'm surprised it sold top 20.
I really thought that was going to be an entree into a Zelda game that was that perspective, which would have been kind of cool, but it wasn't.
Nope, never did it.
18. Next one, Animal Crossing City Folk.
Yes, I believe it was.
No, it was number 21. Yeah, I just went right there on the edge. No, I was actually quite surprised that did not make the top 20.
0 for 2.
Yeah, well, it's all right. I mean, this is tough, right? This is really just about getting us started into the Wii. I mean, you're not going to be fired for
I'm glad for that.
your responses, most likely. Just Dance 3.
They're big sellers. I'm going to say not top 20, though.
It was number 10.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, number 10. Wow. I was surprised, but you know what it did is it made pretty breakthrough use of motion. Mm-hmm. So that's why those games sold so well. The popular music.
I'll tell you the reason I hesitated and ultimately guessed what I did is I know the Just Dances always sell well. I've bought every single one of them for my children, but there were so many on the Wii that I just didn't know. There was 3. Like I didn't know where that would fall, so I took a guess. Were there any other Just Dances on the top 20? Do you know?
Just Dance 2 was number 20.
Interesting. Wow. All right.
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's they were games that made full use of the motion systems. They were pick up and play, super casual, had music that people liked. Was there a Michael Jackson Just Dance?
It was not Just Dance brand. Yeah, it was the same sort of game, but it was not Just Dance brand.
Yeah.
But I think up until Just Dance 2022, they still did a Wii port of it, I think. It was very late that they were still churning those out for the original Wii.
Wow, that shows the lasting power. One little interesting note here, I think that'll frame up the conversation we're about to have. Of the top 20 games, Nintendo published 17.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting... I think it shows sort of a turning point in Nintendo's strategy, right? That they became a little bit less concerned with third-party folks. You know, the Just Dance is made by Ubisoft, but it's interesting. So you had the Just Dance games. We had a few of them, but they were not regularly played. I think that once they played them, and then the novel aspect wore off.
My youngest especially loved them, and we even have Just Dance 2024. So we've been with it for a long time. But I did discover when my kids were much smaller and they wanted me to play along with them, I did discover that I could just sit in the couch and shake the Wiimote, and still, as long as I shook it with the beat, I was fine. I didn't actually have to get up and do cardio, heaven forbid.
Yeah, you could eat. You could have like a sub
sandwich in one hand, Wiimote in the other.
Yeah, Wiimote in the other. Don't get mixed up.
No.
You eat the Wiimote and shake the sandwich.
This sandwich is crunchy.
A couple just quick facts. They sold 101 million of these guys. 7th most of all time over a 9-year lifespan. To give you a little bit of perspective, the next system that the Nintendo released sold 14 million systems. That was the Wii U, just under 14 million. And then the Switch has sold 142 million. So, to give you a perspective, the Wii is up there in Nintendo sales. And it was, another thing about it, and this just shows you where Nintendo bucking trends as we get into it. It was in the 7th generation, which compares to Xbox 360 and the PS3, but it was not HD. It was what they called, ED, extended definition at the time, which was 480p and widescreen. They just didn't care.
Yeah.
That, they were going to put in the processing power that they needed to get the gameplay experience that they needed. And, HD was not that important to them.
No.
That continues to this day, incidentally. But I think it's very interesting. And one little point before we step in, Nielsen said this: Nintendo's Wii saw most of its usage from boys aged 6 through 11 and women aged 25 through 34, and was used by more women aged 35 plus than either Xbox 360 or the PlayStation 3. Nielsen explained this phenomenon as a result of titles such as Wii Fit, Guitar Hero, and Rock Band having engaged an older female gamer like never before. Now, I think their analysis is kind of wrong here, because Guitar Hero and Rock Band absolutely stunk on the Wii, and that was the worst versions because of, availability of media, bad downloads, bad online play. But I think the overall point is right, is that there were things about the Wii that engaged an audience that was not your typical gamer.
It was kind of the operating directive of the Wii. Was, Nintendo was not interested in competing with Microsoft or Sony. They were interested in expanding what it meant to have a gaming audience. That was intentional decisions, that we're going to target these different demographics. We're going to offer more casual gameplay. We don't care if we don't have the next Call of Duty on our system, because the people who want that, they're going to play that on Sony or Microsoft. So yeah, it's not surprising at all that Nielsen would have that kind of breakdown. But it's a unique system. Even amongst Nintendo's oeuvre of systems, the Wii is a very unique system.
It also wasn't going to be your media center. The 360 and the PS3 were both like, man, you can watch your cable through this or whatever, and all of the apps and everything. Not that the Wii U did have some of those that actually had a great Netflix interface. Wasn't in HD, though. But that wasn't the point of the Wii. The Wii was about playing games, and it was not trying to be everything to everyone. And it also came out at a significantly lower price point. So, they were, prepared for, I think you said it, expanding the market. They're not going to beat those other guys. They're going to get customers that those other guys would never have had, would never been able to sell into. Creating a new market, really. So how did you get your Wii? Because I got to tell you, I don't remember how I got my Wii.
Oh, I remember.
Do you remember that moment you brought it home and unboxed it?
I absolutely do. The Wii was released November of 2006, and it was the hot ticket item, right? Like, everybody knew it, everybody wanted it, so it was sold out across the world. This was before pre-orders were a big thing, and it was before scalping was a big thing. So, the idea that you could just walk into a store and find a Wii for sale, that existed in the world, but it just wasn't happening very much. And so I was at Toys R Us in December of that year of 2006, just doing some Christmas shopping, and randomly from the back of the store, they brought out a pallet of Wiis, and they cut the plastic on them. Yeah, and everybody who was around me, and including myself, we just rushed and grabbed one. And so I got one, and I immediately went and bought the classic controller accessory, and then a copy of Zelda Twilight Princess, and checked out. And when I came home, it was a shock to my wife that I had purchased a gaming system. And in my defense, I had said, as soon as I find a Wii, I'm buying it. So that I made sure that the expectation was set, but
your bases were covered.
My bases were covered, but I don't think that the expectation that I would happen to find one a month before, or a month after rather, it was released, was expected. So we had one Christmas of launch year. I lived it from the first moment. And in fact, the Wii that I still have in my collection is that Wii. It's the one I bought. It still works. It's still fine. It's still got every virtual console purchase I've ever made on it, and it's sitting on my shelf. So that's how I got my Wii.
I can't exactly remember. We did not get it right before Christmas. I believe we got it right after. But as I was thinking back, I was like, okay, gosh darn it, how did I get my Wii? I remembered that I had watched a documentary about the Wii. I went back and checked my DVR. Unlimited DVR storage online, and I found it. You remember when they released? We came back with G4. last year, the cable news network for video games,
Right.
G4, the gaming channel.
Absolutely.
It was on for about 15 minutes
Yeah.
before it failed out. But one night I was watching, and there happened to be a Wii documentary. So I went back and revisited that. Mostly stuff we already knew, but it did have some footage of when Nintendo of America was conceiving of the Wii. And so I ripped that off the DVR, and I wanted to share that with you and our audience. So if you want to cue that up?
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll go ahead and play that.
Here it goes.
Inside a small conference room at Nintendo of America, June 15, 2004.
I'm telling you, this new guy is weird but smart. We need to listen to him. We're lucky we got him here in America.
Professor Dr. Gorbflog? Where's he from, anyway?
It says, Europe. Hello, fellow Nintendians. I am Professor Dr. Gorbflog. I'm here to show you my new prototype interactive train gaming system.
Yeah, sure. Wow, that's a small box you got there. Very intriguing, Gorflag, is it?
Gorbflog. Professor Dr. Gorbflog. But you can just call me Dr. Gorbflog. Let me get it ready.
Nice throw!
Wait, what? Do that again. That was just the calibration sequence. I used it to get the motion tuned for a specific...
You just moved your arm with that thing in your hand.
The Omni-Axis Motion Stick Remote Control.
Yeah, that. And your little guy on the screen, he bowled. I mean, like, he really bowled. Do that again.
Gentlemen, this is not about bowling.
Do it again.
Nice throw!
Oh my goodness. Now, please, this is serious. Using the Omni-Axis Motion Stick Remote Control, we will be able to train people at home on a number of very complex tasks that can take years to master. We will use this technology to prepare the world for a future. Can it also play tennis? Gorbflog, you marvelous son of a... Dr. Gorbflog, please. You are missing the point of this. We are entering the next stage of human-machine interactivity, and not a minute too soon. We need to prepare everyone, the old, the young, the Queen of England, for complex tasks such as plastistill refinement, orbit turret laser operation, and moon-based defense against dark, otherworldly powers that...
Doctor, calm down with all of this jargon speak. Scotty and I are from marketing. These do sound like really great games, though.
This thing is really incredible. Can I customize my little man?
Yeah, the little guy on the screen. Can we make him look like, well, like me or you or Jay Leno?
You do not understand. Check me out, my little guy's playing baseball. Give me that. It's delicate.
This is incredible. You've sold us. One little problem, though.
Yes, a big problem. You think this is some kind of game.
It's the name. Way too long and confusing. I mean, if we had boy in it somewhere, maybe. But this...
It's not good. We need to come up with a better name for our invention. I do not...
Whoa, that's it. We'll call our invention the Wii.
I've been sent here on an important mission from...
We know, Europe. You're such a strange guy. And that controller, let's shorten its name too. Remote?
No, Wiimote.
Oh yeah. And the little dudes on the screen, the ones you and I, Scotty, just came up with, those are me's. Get it? Like me. We are going to sell 100 million of these things.
Actually, 101 million worldwide, over 9 years, but it's not supposed to happen this way.
Gorbflog, doctor, you're a weird little nerd, and you're from Europe. But I love you anyway. Now let's pack this thing up and get on a private jet to Japan and show the executive team their next Nintendo system.
It's not a game. I don't know who Jay Leno is. Calling it a Wii? You are changing the plan too much.
Did you catch that? We? You?
Yeah, that sounds dumb.
Yeah, you're right, Scotty baby. Gorbflog, get your weird little self, your shiny futuristic clothes, and this billion-jillion-dollar game machine we all equally invented downstairs ASAP.
This will set civilization back hundreds of years. I hope the Dark Ones from Tanis 4 can be fought with tennis rackets. I should have gone to Sega.
Isn't that crazy? This name, Gorbflab, keeps coming up.
It's Professor Dr. Gorbflog, I'll have you know.
Yeah, he has many titles. Are we dealing with what's that effect where you think like...
Oh, the Mandela effect?
The Mandela effect. Yeah, maybe there's a Mandela effect going on with Gorbflab. Maybe this is just in our head, but we got to look into that. But yeah, I mean, obviously, it was advanced tech, and it sounds like it kind of intended for something else, and Nintendo got it and redirected it. But hey, it's a little tidbit, a little history that I think we can share. So we can just share it with our audience. And
in the history of the Wii, I'd never heard that story before, so that's great.
I know, it's kind of new to come up with. It's fun to come up with something new. Maybe if Pat the NES punk, who's a Nintendo historian, gets word of this, maybe he'll respond to my multiple emails inviting him onto the show. Pat, I've got more weird little history nuggets that you don't have, and we can talk.
If that's not a carrot that dangles in front of him, I don't know what is. Anyway, I've got tons and tons of memories of the Wii, and I'm sure that you do too.
When I think about Wii, I think about one thing and one thing only, and that is bowling.
Oh, yes.
It's clearly, obviously it was a technical demo and went a little far, but I just think that, when we talk about the killer app, right? The thing that sells the device. Bowling was Wii's killer app, right? Halo was the Xbox's killer app. But bowling was, that was like, it was so natural. Anyone could pick that up and play it over and over, and it did not get old. And it was one of those things you could do and become good at, but never master, right? But really invest a lot of time in. And I realize it's just a silly game, but bowling, I got stuck on. I loved it. And then when Wii Resort came out with the Motion Plus and the better bowling, I was like, wow, this is it. I still think that Wii Resort's bowling, and I have played the Switch Sports version, which is great. I think the Wii Resort bowling with the Motion Plus is just as good. And I think that the controller for the Wii is more natural to hold than the Switch controller for games like bowling. Just a preference. But that was the killer app. And so many of my memories go back to bowling in my basement with my wife and my nephews, and I don't know. So when we talk about that, that's the hook.
Yeah,
for me,
Wii Sports as a whole package was genius.
Oh,
and especially to do it as a pack-in for such a new concept of a system, new controls that we'd never seen anything like that before, and for Nintendo to say you're going to need this. I mean, it's in my top 10 Wii games of the whole system's library, for crying out loud. It's so good.
Sure. The pack-in game.
It's so well presented. It's just excellent.
But, look at Nintendo's history with that, right? The pack-in game for the Nintendo, Super Mario Brothers, Super Nintendo, Super Mario World, Nintendo 64, Mario's...
Nintendo 64
it wasn't the pack-in.
Did not have a pack-in.
It did not have pack-ins. That's right. And neither did the
GameCube.
The GameCube.
Nope, sure didn't.
But those early games, right? I mean, they have a history of those early games being this is going to train you to play the new system, and it's going to cover all of the stuff. And in the process, it's also going to be a lot of fun. And Wii Sports, and then its sequel, Wii Sports Resort, which brought Motion Plus, which just really made the motion controls, which were already really good, made them just better. Those games are... I give it to a Resort because I think it's just a better version, a more refined technical version. But, man, those games are so much fun. And, fired up, I'll play it right now. Right? I mean, it's just that much fun. My collection mostly dealt with Nintendo first-party games, like Mario Kart, New Super Mario Brothers Wii. Whew. I did have some third-party games, but I found there was a lot of shovelware in the third-party.
Tremendous.
Like Wii Carnival. Let's throw a ball in a cup, and stuff like that. And I never felt like the third-party games. I just, like I played Call of Duty on the Wii, and like, I don't know, man, this is not nearly as much fun.
An interesting aspect about the system is, with a few notable exceptions, the third parties never really came to terms with what the system was about. It didn't have the horsepower of the other systems, so you couldn't just do a straight port, and nobody could program for the Wii remote and other controls of the Wii as well as Nintendo could. So you kind of had that situation, and the third-party developers who did release titles that are revered on the Wii, those were role-playing games in a lot of examples, or you're really curious outliers, like Resident Evil 4 on the Wii is arguably the best version of that game that has been released. And it's so interesting that Capcom was like, oh, okay, we're going to update this game, we're going to change it for this specific system, and truly made it fantastic. And I would have liked to have seen more third parties take the effort to do that, especially with the install base that we had. It was not a chicken or egg scenario. The chicken was there. Let's put some eggs underneath it, or that analogy kind of broke down. But you get my point.
Sure, but I get what you're saying, right? It's interesting. I was looking at my top 20, and I had more than that. Resident Evil 4, which is revered and considered a great version of the game, was not in their top 25. And I thought that it might be, but it's just so dominated by Nintendo games.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I played Resident Evil 4 on it, and I thought it was fine. But for me, it was like, okay, if I'm going to play these games, I'm going to play those games on a standard gaming system. And the Wii was special. It was for couch co-op like we talk about, but it was for family time and a different type of experience you could not get on those other systems. Despite their efforts to replicate it, they were not as good, and I think we'll talk a little bit about that. But I always gravitated towards the first-party games. I felt like you were right. Technically, they knew how to do it, but I think it's beyond technically. I think Nintendo knew creatively how to make it fun. I mean, I think those other third parties, they were not dumb, right? They had good documentation, too. Nothing was being hidden. They technically knew how to sense the motion. I think that, translating that into something fun was Nintendo's superpower. And that's why they were able to take and create classics, right? And they could sell you Mario Kart. They had another Mario Kart. And I do think Double Dash was a better version of Mario Kart, just for the record, for Nintendo nerds and the GameCube. But man, Mario Kart for the Wii, it brought motion controls to it and gave you the option if you didn't want to do it. But it was a lot of fun with the steering wheel, and really simple. But sold a jillion copies. Actually, I know how many copies it sold because it's in front of me right now. But it was a pack-in for a while, so it sold 37 million copies.
Yeah. The really cool thing about that was when the Wii came out, we had really, really young children. And so, if they wanted to play Mario Kart Double Dash, they struggled with that. But you could give them a Wiimote and just be like, no, you just got to turn the controller. And we had so much fun with that as a family where, I would never play with the motion controls because I'm me and I was raised on 8-bit Nintendo. So I know how to D-pad works. But
you flip it over.
Exactly. But for my kids to have that as an option and to be able to play that along with everybody else, that was huge for us.
It was great, and anybody could pick it up and figure it out. It really, you joke about it being in the waiting room of nursing homes, but or maybe you don't. I do. I make a lot of nursing home jokes, but the truth is that the demographics that it appealed to was broad. And it brought gaming to people that you would not expect gaming to be. They made a special Wii for the Queen of England. I've heard that. I believe that it's true. Like there was a special gold one that was given to her. I had no idea whether or not she ever played it. I really don't.
I think they sold it recently.
They did, yeah. I did, but they did. But I don't know whether or not she ever touched it, or maybe William and the other one, the redheaded one. I don't know anything about the royal family. Maybe they played it. I don't know. But. That appeal to a broad audience. But then also, you have those deep role-playing games that people love too, right? It had everything covered. And it was it was in a generation, the seventh generation, not to get too nerdy here, but that was a turning point, right? The PS3 and the 360. To me, the seventh generation represents as good as it's going to get, and graphically it's going to look better. It's going to get more refined, but I mean, they stepped into a point where it's hard to imagine it getting any better, right? A PS3 game and a PS5 game, there's a lot of gameplay similarities.
Right.
One just looks noticeably better, but it doesn't do a whole lot more. And Wii was in that seventh generation, and it did something totally different. And it was, Nintendo all the way. We're going to be Nintendo inside of our walled garden. They're in a class of their own, like Apple. That was a tough generation to hang in. And to me, they're the winners, despite, I think, the 360 and the PS3 both being incredible systems. I think the Wii wins because the Wii has a legacy that continues to this day. I think, right? I think you could turn on a Wii and it kind of looks fuzzy and it doesn't, it's obviously not HD, but you hear the sound of the Miis and you hear the bowling and people will come and play.
Yeah, absolutely. I will still, if I'm having to do something at work that is really like brain intensive, I will turn on the Wii system music and just let it play in the background while I'm working. I've done that for years.
You know what that's like? Have you ever been to Disney World? I don't know if we've ever talked about this. Have you ever been to Disney World?
The last time I was at Disney World, I was 3, so I don't really remember it.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that you probably wouldn't remember. It's changed since you were 3. We used to go to Disney World a lot because we had family in the area. Haven't been in years. But in Epcot, there is constantly music playing in the background. It's very similar to the Wii music. It gets in your head, but it's really good, and it's really like... I don't know. It's almost like, white noise, brown noise level of just sort of comfort. But yeah, I could totally see how having that. And also the Mii's cheering. It's a great sound. It brings me up. In real life, people don't often cheer for me. But having some Mii's cheer for me. Did you ever do that thing? And this was sort of referenced in our little G4 business there that we showed that clip. But where you would go and download custom Mii's where people had made them look like celebrities.
So I was aware of it, but I never did it because I always wanted my Mii to look like me. So that's where I was. Yeah. So, but I was aware that it was a thing and that it happened.
I'm hideous, so I don't want anything to look like me. We did that. And we had Michael Jackson and the thing is you had all of them. You could put them on the screen, the cool screen where all your Mii's. Oh, so genius. Oh my gosh, so genius. But it's cool. You watch it. You're not doing anything. You say, hey, there's all Mii's. But they were so good. You could pick out. Well, there's Michael Jackson. There's Jay Leno. There's they were all there, right? Like there's Tom Cruise. Got the sunglasses. I was like, that was such a cool system and. It just brought that into now it's standard, right? Character customization, far more advanced than what you got with the Mii's. But was it ever as fun?
Well, that's what I was going to say because you talked about legacy of the Wii. And the Mii thing, it really breaks my heart that Nintendo has kind of walked away from that. Because the Mii's persisted to the Wii U. They were on the 3DS.
They did?
And then on the Switch, absolutely nothing. Your user account is based on whichever Nintendo property character, Mario, Yoshi, whoever that you pick.
Mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. Why are there not Mii's on the Switch? I mean, that should have been a no-brainer. It should have come forward with every Mii you've ever created or ever had on any Nintendo system. Like that was super fun, and it made interacting with the system itself a joy, not even just playing a game. Whereas the Switch, which is a console I dearly, dearly love, but you turn that thing on, and the only thing you can do is launch a game. There is literally nothing else it will do, and so I think that there was a real joy that Nintendo just abandoned by not keeping that Mii Plaza and that kind of idea going.
Boy, you're so right. And, I noticed that very early on the Switch, which is a great system. It is great. And, but the absence of the Mii's is notable. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I got my Bowser badge or whatever, but that's not, where's my Mii?
Yeah.
Where's my Jay Leno guy or my Michael Jackson guy? I would say this. I hope they're working on the new Switch, and they haven't given it a name, right? And we call it new Switch. We don't know what it's going to be called. That whoever's doing the roadmap and the strategy on that is pulling the Mii's back into it, because there really is something to mine there. People loved that. And, you could monetize that. I hate to do that. Hey, you can monetize that. Look at how much money people pour into that garbage Fortnite game, to customize and do that, man. Nintendo could, say this, boy, unlimited customizations if you're part of their Nintendo, $6.99 a month plan, something like that. People will sign up, right? Get their free games or whatever. And but also I can, put this funny bowler hat on my Mii, right, or whatever. I don't know. But that was special, and you're right that it's missing in the new systems. The new system is a crime. I really think that they'll bring that back. Nintendo's not dumb,
I
right?
hope they do.
Yeah, that's just, man. That's an element of their recipe that they just didn't put into the Switch. I'm sure that there's a reason, but it was special. It was special, and the Wii brought that forward. And I honestly can't think of any other Avatar type thing that is that much fun. I don't know. Maybe.
No, there isn't. And, Xbox tried to do it. They had their, I don't remember what they called them, but they had their own little cartoon thing. And it was totally like, this is Microsoft's version of the Mii, because it was all like, it doesn't look cartoony, it's real, and the proportions are correct, and it's Microsoft kind of a thing.
And you can die, and if your character dies, you die. That's how real the Xbox is. We're going to murder you in your sleep. Yeah, that was part of their Kinect. And I remember getting that and hooking it up, and we took it back. Because it was like, this is not as fun, right? We were thinking, it's going to be the HD Wii, and it wasn't.
Microsoft tried with Kinect, and then Sony tried with the PlayStation Move. And both of them could not do it. Like, they could not capture that.
They had arguably better tech, but they did, unlike Nintendo, they just did not have the fun element in their creative, that spark that was missing. They couldn't make it as fun. And how sad is that, right? But it also goes to show you that the tech, it doesn't, throwing more processor, more memory, better GPU, multiple GPUs. Listen, the Switch doesn't have 4K, right? We talk about Nintendo being a little bit behind on things. The Switch not having 4K is more than a little bit behind. It's a lot behind. Hasn't affected their sales. They sold 140 million of them. They don't, why would they feel like they need 4K, right? I'm sure whatever they do next will.
That's part of Nintendo's genius, because ever since
it is.
Ever since the Game Boy, when they're like, we're going to take calculator technology and we're going to make a gaming system out of it, and
you're going to buy it and love it and talk about it for 30 years.
Exactly, and they've always had that outlook, which I think is genius, and it goes back to something I've said on this podcast before, but it's that old quote from Orson Welles where he says, "The absence of limitation is the enemy to art." And I just
strengths.
Yeah, I think that is the world Nintendo plays in. Whereas Microsoft and Sony are like, we can build the biggest, bestest, fastest thing, and here you go, here it is. But they have absolutely no idea of anything interesting to do with it. Whereas Nintendo is intentionally constrained into a much smaller playground, but that gives them the opportunity to be imaginative. And also, they've got geniuses working for them, and they've got seasoned programmers working for them. I mean, the average tenure of your Nintendo developer is something like 20 plus years. So the fact that these people have been doing it, and it's not a situation like the rest of the industry faces where, we released a game, it sold great, and we're closing the studio because we can't afford to keep it open.
We laid everybody off.
Yeah, like Nintendo does not do that. And I think that really shows in what they've built and what they can continue to build.
So you mentioned when you bought Twilight Princess, which is a beautiful game. I have never played it or Skyward Sword. So I'm assuming you've played Skyward Sword.
I have.
Are those games good? I got to say, I stopped with the one on the GameCube, and I loved it.
Oh, Wind Waker?
I thought it was a beautiful game. Wind Waker, beautiful game. But it felt to me like this. It was like I was kind of done with Zelda. It's like, this is great, but I don't need to play more. But Twilight Princess always looked like a great game.
Twilight Princess is an outstanding game. It is one of my favorite Zeldas. I highly recommend it. And unfortunately, the best way to play it is the HD remake that was on Wii U. But
Wii U,
that's,
yeah.
I mean, that's tricky to get, right? I mean, that's not readily available. The Wii U didn't
it's
swell
part
well.
of the like a set that you buy,
Well,
or something.
they did release it as just a standalone game. But you know, now since nobody's making Wii U software anymore, it's pretty expensive. Not the most expensive, but it's more than you'd probably want to pay for it. So the Switch is just crying for that and the HD remake of Wind Waker to be ported over.
Yes.
I hope it happens. Or I hope they do that for the next Switch or whatever. Because if you were going to sit down and say, I'm going to play Twilight Princess today, I would actually not recommend playing the original version. It is a little...
You go to the Wii U.
Yeah, it's a little crusty, and it's mostly to do with graphics fidelity. There's a lot of haze filter on that game that just kind of makes it a wash of blurry, which now that I'm a little bit older, my eyes really struggle with that.
Sure.
So the HD version is beautiful. It's crystal clear. You can tell everything that's going on. And I just hope that at some point that gets freed from the shackles of the Wii U. But it's absolutely a fantastic game. And one of the things that exists in my memory for it is we got the Wii December 2006. In 2007, I know you'll remember this, but a lot of our listeners may not know, but in 2007, Southwest Missouri had a drastic ice storm, the likes of which we had never seen, and we had to evacuate our home. And I'm not...
You're right. Not just the Wii had never seen it, but the people of Missouri had never seen it either.
That's exactly correct.
But the Wii was also very disturbed
we also
by it.
had not seen ice storm like that at all. And we and the Wii had to evacuate our home, and I'm not overstating that. Like, it was dangerous for us to stay
we did
home.
the same. Yeah, you could. There was no power. There was no water.
And we were without power for 14 days during that ordeal. Now, the reason I bring that story up is because we did take the Wii, the WII, with us, and it jumped with us from hotel to hotel, and and eventually ended up with us at our in-laws' home, who lived out of Springfield at that time, and so we were playing Twilight Princess as a family, and that was kind of our salvation during the ice storm, where we had entertainment. We had 2 young kids at the time, and we're able to keep them happy with it. And honestly, that's how I finished Twilight Princess, was at my in-laws' house while I had no idea if my house was still standing back in my hometown.
Right.
That's just one of the many things in my life that the Wii has accompanied me with.
That's crazy. We did not take the any gaming systems with us when we absconded from our home during that ice storm and went to stay with my brother, which everyone else in the family did the same. But they had a huge house, and we did other things. But should have brought the Wii. Now his TV was small. Now that I think about it, and the Wii was released at a time where bigger TVs were becoming in fashion, right? So it wasn't an HD system, but it did work in widescreen, and really those motion games benefit from a bigger screen. We had a 42-inch at home. A plasma TV is actually what we had.
Really?
And we played on that 42-inch Panasonic
Fancy.
plasma. It lasted many years. It lasted a long time. It consumed a lot of power. I'm pretty certain civilization will end more soon due to the number of plasma TVs and how much power and heat they generated. But yeah, that's a great story about that following with you. And Skyward Sword, not to spend too much time on Zelda, that one did not look as fun to me. It looked like it took the motion controls too far, but...
Honestly, my complaint with Skyward Sword is not the motion controls. My complaint is with some core design choices of that game. It's got a severe pacing issue. You have to slog through 3 to 4 hours at the opening of that game before you get to anything that you would actually want to do, which is terrible. And it's unfortunate because if you follow the Zelda timeline and you're one of those kinds of people, Skyward Sword is like super important to what's going on, but most people don't play it. And even if they try it, most people bounce off of it.
I'd like to talk to, and maybe at some point we have a crossover, which we will, talk to our friend Anthony at the Retro Gamers podcast about the Skyward Sword and his opinion of it. Because I've heard that many times, that the pacing and going from Cloud Kingdom to Cloud Kingdom or something like that, I may have got that, my memory wrong. So, Retro Gamers Podcast, folks, if you're not listening to the Retro Gamers Podcast, you should be. They're our buddies, so little plug for them. Did you have Wii Music?
I did, actually.
What was up with that? I don't. I'm like, I would watch people play it, and I'm like, what? This is weird.
So it's kind of akin to like Mario Paint on the Super Nintendo, which is,
Okay.
what's the point of this? There really isn't one.
Right, I can do that on my computer.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and there's no like really incredible tool that you can play with that's really exciting, and there's really no good way to save what you've done, so you can be like, hey, check out what I created. So to me, Wii Music is flawed in some of those senses, but the idea of using the Wiimote to create music, I think, is pretty inspired, and it shows kind of the playful side of Nintendo, which I think we saw again in the Switch with the Labo stuff, where you would build things out of cardboard and use those to interact with the game, and it always breaks my heart when Nintendo does those kinds of things and they don't just make a killing, because I know that dissuades Nintendo from doing more crazy inventive stuff. But I actually appreciated Wii Music. I still own a copy to this day.
Okay.
I didn't play it a ton because, like I said, flawed, but the core idea was really cool, and it was something I was happy to support.
I just didn't get it. I watch people play, like, I don't get this. So, and because I'm not a musical person, maybe it just, really didn't make sense. It was on the fringes enough that for someone like me, it's like, I don't get that at all. The Super Mario Galaxy games were huge. I didn't play a ton of them. What I did play, I really enjoyed. I thought that the use of the motion control and in general, the gravity effects were just incredible in the game. The physics.
Super Mario Galaxy is a transformative game for me. It absolutely blew me away. It might be my favorite Mario game. Oh, it might be my favorite 3D Mario. It might be my favorite Mario across the entire board.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan of Super Mario Galaxy. And part of what it is it is so creative. It is just pure fun. And it was the first time that Mario successfully told a narrative. Like in Super Mario Sunshine, they attempted to bring a story to Mario. So it's not just run from point A to point B, but it's like there's something else happening there. And Super Mario Sunshine gets a lot of grief for really kind of falling on its face. I mean, it's got really terrible voice acting. It's not an interesting story.
Did Charles Martinet do the voice of Mario in that?
Oh, did he? That's a good question.
I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know.
If our friends from the Retro Gamers podcast were here,
they would
be
know.
able to. Larry would like.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what Charles Martinet is doing right now. He's got a webcam set up in his house. I'm joking. Larry's not a stalker, but there are people who know that. It's funny though. Super Mario Sunshine does get a bad rap.
Yeah.
It's not that fun of a game. It really isn't. It's kind of laborious, I think. But
this is not the Super Mario Sunshine podcast.
I know
I could
you're
go
right.
on for hours about the flaws of Super Mario Sunshine. Don't get me wrong. But my point with Galaxy is that they tried it again, right? Which it would have been easy to say, nope, see, we told you Mario is about running from point A to point B and nothing else. But Galaxy brought an actual narrative to Mario, did it successfully in a really incredible way, and totally changed the dynamic for me. I love Super Mario Galaxy, and I will go as far as to say I think the Wii version is the way to play it. I mean, recently they did a Switch port for Super Mario Galaxy. Yep. It's fine. I think the Wii is superior. Like, again, this is one of those examples where Nintendo made something for a very specific controller and just absolutely floored me with it and did such a good job. I dearly love Super Mario Galaxy. It was one of the bullet points in my notes that I definitely wanted to talk about. So thank you for segueing into that.
I will say that I think the superior Mario game is one that is getting a lot of revisionist crap now. But that's New Super Mario Brothers Wii. I love the New Super Mario Brothers series. I love them. And those came at the sort of in the later life cycle of the Wii. But that was our choice. It's not my favorite Mario game of all time, but that is Mario 3. But that game was so much fun. And the multiplayer aspect was nuts, getting 4 little Mario dudes on the screen at the same time. And, they went back to that well a lot. You could say, I think it would be fair to say, they overdid the new Super Mario Brothers brand. They just made so many games on so many platforms that it became difficult to tell what the differences were. They could have been exact copies, and you probably would not have noticed because there were so many different games. But I did love those. I preferred those to Galaxy. I think it just comes down to whether or not, 3D games make sense to you or 2D games, do. And I just have a preference for and a nostalgia for 2D games. I thought New Super Mario Brothers was like, here you go. This feels like old Mario, but with just enough new stuff that you're not, that we're still showing off the capabilities of the system. And man, I tell you what, the one thing I could point out with the Wiimote, you flip that guy over and it is a fantastic side-scroller controller.
Yeah.
This leans into, I think, the Virtual Console and why it worked so well is that you could download all those old NES games, and you could plug in a classic controller, and that's fine if that's your choice. Or you could just flip that Wiimote over. It's super comfortable. That D-pad is so good on the Wiimote that, it works for those 2D games great.
Yeah, no, it's surprisingly functional, right? Like you look at it and you would think I'm supposed to flip this over on its side. This is not going to work, but it works very well. And the only reason I would choose the classic controller is because I actually think it is designed even that much better. Because I love the ergonomics of the original classic controller. I think Nintendo just, again, knocked that one out of the park. It's fantastic. But I'll go back to Super Mario Brothers Wii for just a brief second, because it's totally fine that's where your preferences lie. It is a fabulous game. And when the new Super Mario Brothers franchise appeared originally on the Nintendo DS, I was a little lukewarm. I was like, okay, this is fun, but, I've kind of been here, done that. But New Super Mario Brothers Wii is so much fun. It is an exceptionally good game. And honestly, I think the strength of that game comes from some really incredible level design.
It is tough levels too.
Right.
Hard.
Yeah. And it's just so much fun to play. And like you alluded to, we did the multiplayer thing with the family as well, which is less about multiplayer and more about how much can I stomp on my brother's or my sister's head. And
yes. And how much more difficult it makes a game.
Yes.
Like that, right? Like you're just thinking, man, if you guys would stop playing for a minute and let me do this, you guys all die, float around as ghosts. I'll finish this part and I'll bring you back. Great design there too, because that actually strategically you would do that. Say, die here, I'll take care of this, and I'll bring you back, right?
Yep.
Man, I love the new series. And I'll say probably the later ones, the HD ones, sure, they were crisper and they were cleaner, but when it comes down to it, they were basically the same game. And it was new at the time, and I did play the first version on my son's DS. We bought it for him and he lost it, which is a very sad story, and I did rebuy it for him because I can't let a little kid be sad. But I played it, and I remember I did not have a lukewarm reaction. I remember thinking, oh man, they put this on a big TV, and I'm going to play this, and then they heard my wishes, and they granted
they
it.
Fulfilled
the
it.
Nintendo Genie.
Yeah, good for them.
Yes. So that the Virtual Console, right, brought back stuff, and honestly, there was so much of the Virtual Console which was across multiple Nintendo platforms. The 3DS, the ill-fated Wii U. Do you have a large Virtual Console collection?
Embarrassingly so, yes.
Okay, good. I'm glad you had it embarrassing.
I ate up the Virtual Console. And, the Wii came at a time where I was not collecting retro video games, right? I was in a point in my life where I didn't have the disposable income to do it. I didn't have the time to do it. And so I got the Wii because I wanted to play. I wanted to keep current with the video gaming, but like the old stuff, I really had just kind of relegated that to the past. And then the Virtual Console hit, and I was like, I can buy NES games for $5. I can buy SNES games for $7. I was all about it.
And play them on the big TV.
Yeah.
And I think it had save states, right?
It did ish. So,
okay.
You could save, if I remember right, it would like do a freeze whenever you backed out of the game, but I don't think you could do like a save and then a load kind of a situation.
Okay. All right.
I may be wrong about that, but that's kind of how I remember it. But yeah, and honestly, it's kind of the Virtual Console that I have to blame for buying retro games, which is because I started noticing that the emulation on the Virtual Console was not always up to snuff. And I would argue that it was good enough for a $5 NES game or a $7 SNES game, but it struggled a little bit. So then I would be playing a game that I knew like the back of my hand from when I was a child, and it would not perform correctly on the Wii. And so then that motivated me to seek it out and do and start buying the old stuff so that I could have the truer experience.
You noticed that the colors were slightly off in the Batman NES game. I've always heard those. And
Colors, controller latency, and even some of the pixel sizing is off on some of it.
that's true, right? And that is also, I mean, there's a challenge there with the pixel sizing because of the transition from 4:3 to 16:9. And I think we're far enough away from the originals that we don't notice it now as much. But I bet at the time it was fresh for you and you're like, oh.
Well, I still notice it because I'm crazy.
Do you still notice it? Okay. All right.
Yeah, but I'm one of those guys that's like, oh,
Yep.
how much for your rebuilt NES? Sure, that's a bargain.
Recapped. Yeah, I want mine recapped. Sir, I don't know what that means.
Just do it.
I know. Just put a new hat on my NES.
But I appreciate the idea of the virtual console, and it really does break my heart that Nintendo has gone to a subscription model. I'm not surprised. Yeah. I understand that financially it's where the world is, but I had really hoped the virtual console would continue to exist. Now, my complaint with the virtual console, aside from some of the emulation complaints, is it should have been greater. I mean, I never understood the piecemealing of games on that system. I mean, just open the floodgates. I guess
just open it up.
I guess I should be grateful to Nintendo because I was still able to afford groceries because they piecemealed them.
You've got $90,000 in credit card debt because they just opened it up.
So, but I never understood for third party stuff and like G.I. Joe, that's going to be a rights nightmare to figure out how to release that. I understand that. But like every game Nintendo made, why is that not on Virtual Console day one? Like I've never understood that.
And they moved away from that. One quick note on the Virtual Console, they opened that up to other systems as well, right? Wasn't there like
Sega?
Like you get some Sega stuff on there, TurboGrafx. Yeah. Very, very smart, right? And I mean, Nintendo won, right? They beat those other guys, so why not be a good winner and let them play in your sandbox, and they can get some money off of it too.
For the longest time, the Castlevania game from TurboGrafx CD, or PC Engine CD, I should say, Akumajo Dracula, was only available.
Is that Dracula X? Is that Dracula X?
Kind of
in one of the translate. So you Castlevania guys, it's as bad as the Zelda guys.
Dracula X was a port of some of Akumajo Dracula.
Okay, all right.
So Rondo of Blood is the actual translation of that, and
yes, thank you.
You're welcome. And
Rondo of Blood.
Yeah, and they finally
tip of my tongue.
They finally did an actual port of that for the Xbox 360 arcade. So Dracula X is only part of the game, and it's a little screwed up. So it's not a one-to-one comparison. Again, I apologize. This is not the Rondo of Blood episode.
I know, but listen, there's a lot of deep lore, right?
Oh,
that goes into this. It shows you that the Wii was not just, even though its appeal was based on old people bowling and swinging around playing tennis and then doing fitness and all that stuff, but there was some depth to it that was beyond what was going on in the other 7th generation consoles in a different direction, coming from that virtual console. Very smart. Again, like the Mii's, Nintendo abandoned the virtual console in the Switch era and went to the subscription model, which I think they could do both, right? I think there's a business model that allows them to do both, and I hope they come back to that. I don't think that they will. I think that they're...
Yeah, I don't either.
So I am hopeful about Mii's, not so hopeful about the future of the virtual console. You know what, though? Again, another innovation, another brilliant thing. Also, it is a great way to combat piracy, because the best way to combat piracy is to make it easy not to pirate.
Absolutely.
And I think that is... Nintendo had a real moral case against the piracy of their games by saying, we're still selling them. Yes. We make it easy. Go pay $3.99 and you don't have to do this. And that moral case becomes a lot more difficult when they make things unavailable. Then, it's a lot, you're legally, you still may have a ground to stand on, but morally or ethically, it becomes a whole lot grayer, I guess you should say.
Oh, I completely agree. I used to be very selective in any ROMs that I would download. And if there was a ROM that was available that I could legally purchase somewhere, I wouldn't touch that one, because I don't believe that we should be doing that.
That's theft. You feel like that was theft.
Exactly. And now, because they've shut down all of these things, I'm maybe a little more gray in that than what I used to be, but that's a different story.
Yep.
But I do want to mention one other thing about the Virtual Console before we move on, which is it was not just old games. They also did some games on the Virtual Console that have not appeared anywhere else.
Right, did not appear physically.
Yeah, and so they did a couple of rebirth games, is what they called them. So they did a Castlevania Rebirth, a Contra Rebirth, and I want to, Gradius Rebirth. Which were basically like remakes with 7th generation graphics and abilities and controls of those old Nintendo games of Contra, Castlevania, and Gradius. Those are gone. You can't get them. You can't plug in a Wii and buy them if you didn't before. There's no place to get them today, and that just is a shame. I really wish we were better. The video game industry was better at preserving their history.
That's where preservation and archival of video games is actually a deal. And I made a little Pat the NES Punk joke, which I by the way, I have been trying to get on the show, and it really does. Hope but he's really big into the, we have to have a mechanism to archive these, and these Wii specific Virtual Console games are the perfect example, and the 360's also got many as well, of games that came out, and then as soon as those services go away, those games disappear, right? And there are ways to preserve them and then distribute them over the internet, but it is not simple, folks. It gets really complicated. But that is something that is the downside of that whole living entirely in that virtual space. There's a downside to that. Video game archiving and preservation, that's actually a thing. It's, in the world in its current state, it's probably not my number one concern. I'm much more concerned about other things. The recent passing of Richard Simmons.
Yeah. The aspect ratio issues of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah, oh my gosh. Listen, Chris, do you want me to cry? I'm over here thinking about sweating to the oldies, and barely can get through this. No, but really there's a case to be made that something should be done, right? And I hope that someone figures that out. I don't think it's... there's always archivalist preservation efforts, right? I mean, people have been trying to get their hands on things like London by Midnight or whatever, the lost Lon Chaney movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's always going to be some things that are lost that people look for. I just think that now with their technology, we could, we can find a way to preserve these things. So
I would hope so.
Let's talk a little bit about the legacy, because I do think we talked about but the early aughts, right? It was a moment. I think the Wii represented a lot of stuff that was going on. It's indelible. I don't think of the PS3 or the 360 as part of being the early aughts culture. If I was going to have, hey, remember the 2000s? I would not have somebody sitting there with a PS3 controller, but somebody swinging around a Wii remote would be part of my little compilation of things that I would show. But it's gone beyond that, right? And I think that we should talk just briefly. The legacy, they did have a follow-up, which was the Wii U, which sold, like an eighth of the number of units. Yeah. To me, I look at it as an HD Wii. Because it's you can play games in HD, and it has its own stuff and it has its own value, but sadly, people did not want to hold a large TV in their laps while they played games.
I don't think that was it. I would push back on that.
Really, don't think it was it?
I really don't think that was it. I honestly believe it was the name. I think if they would have called
people thought it was an accessory.
Exactly. I really think if they'd called it anything else, I don't think it would have outsold the Wii. Don't get me wrong. Because its innovations were in a different direction, but it was a great system, and we had one and loved it and had a tremendous library for the Wii U. But I honestly believe that Joe Average did not comprehend that this is a new thing. They just thought, oh well, I've already got a Wii. I think that was the mistake.
Interesting. They should have listened to those marketing guys in that clip, Mikey and Scotty. They said that was dumb.
Yeah, Scotty knew right from the jump.
I think that I do think that the Wii U was a marketing and financial disaster. It's a fine system. Again, though, Nintendo went into the 8th generation competing with the PS4 and the Xbox One with something that was vastly underpowered. In that case, it did not work for them because it just didn't click. And we could go on and on as to why the Wii was groundbreaking and the Wii U didn't move the needle. But let's just say that the legacy had a bump. And then, of course, you've got the Switch, which brings it back, right? and it exists as part of the 9th generation. I think that at some point you have to stop referring to these Nintendo games by their Nintendo systems by their generations, because they do not line up technically, or even in terms of timeline. They're doing their own thing. But they brought it back, right? You got the motion controls, you got the great games, you got the HD, no 4K. Blows my mind that they just didn't put in, but why not? But they brought it back. We had also referred a little bit to the PlayStation Move and the 360 Kinect, which were attempts from their competitors to build similar systems that really just stunk on ice. We had a Kinect, and I remember like doing the log jumping game or whatever. It's like, this is not fun. They missed something here. There's like it's like eating like a cake, and you know that you're like, it's missing sugar or something. You're like, that's not right. And that's what it felt like with those other systems that tried to do that.
Yeah, the only interesting thing about the Kinect was I ended up using it to build a very rudimentary motion control capture system for a project that I was doing. And just the fact that I was able to do that with technology off the shelf, it kind of blew my mind. So I have a fond place in my heart for the Kinect, for something Microsoft never intended for me to do with it. But I would say that for me, the real legacy of the Wii is not a technological legacy or even a legacy that Nintendo carried. To me, the legacy of the Wii is all of the new people it brought into video games.
Yes.
And I'm sure that that a majority of those had a Wii, enjoyed the Wii, and then that was the 100% of their experience. But you know that there were people that played a Wii, and that was their first experience with video games, and said, wow, I really am into this hobby. And then used that as a jumping off point. Maybe they didn't get a Wii U, but maybe they did get a Switch, or maybe they were like, I want more, and I'm going to jump to the PlayStation 4, or whatever path they took. The fact that it opened the door to exponentially more people that had ever tried the hobby in the past, to me, that is the greatest legacy of the Wii.
And it brought them in, and it brought them to the family room on the couch, and it demanded in-person social interaction in a way that, and I know things have changed, the pandemic and all that, Liz, I get it, but that, I think, I agree, the legacy of the Wii is all the people. It brought the family together to play a video game in a way that maybe probably not like anything before. But when I hear stories of like, well, we got our first Atari 2600, Dad would hook it up to the big TV, and we'd all take turns, playing Asteroids. And, those are not stories you hear very often, except the Wii, and everybody has a story. I have a story. My nephew was playing the Wii down in our basement, which had low ceilings, and he's very tall. He destroyed our ceiling fan because he got a little too into it. And I think it was a Star Wars game. I can't remember what he was playing. But we've all got those stories because that was what the Wii did. That was the legacy, the magic. I'm always hoping when I got my Switch, I was like, oh, I hope this is going to be just like that. And the kids just weren't interested at the time, so it wasn't just like that, as great as the Switch is. But that was, it's an indelible part of that early aughts culture. It changed the relationship that we have with video games, brought it to a whole new generation, sets of generations, cross generations, and it showed that Nintendo's main ingredient is fun. Mm-hmm. The rest of the guys just can't really compete too much with that, including like the new VR stuff, like the Quest. And I get it; people love that, but man, I just, to me, not fun. In fact, if anything, that closes you off from the world. It's like the opposite, right? Like, okay, well, now I'm in my own world, and I'm interacting with virtual things that's not, I want my little Michael Jackson and Jay Leno guy to be playing tennis with each other while I'm talking to my family. And, that's a magic that you're not going to get from the VR. That's
true. And even though the Switch has done tremendous for Nintendo's reputation and for their place in the market, it really has not recaptured that in the power that the original Wii did. Even though my family's probably logged more time together on the Switch than we did the Wii, it's a very different kind of time together, right? It's more competitive. It's controllers in hand. It's not as community driven, if you will, as the original Wii was. So it was a special system. It's not my favorite system, not by a long shot.
No.
It's certainly, it's special. It's unique, and there will probably never be anything quite as magical again, is my suspicion.
They should have had, not as a pack-in, but as a launch title. They should have brought, they did ultimately give you Wii Sports Switch or whatever. That should have been a launch title.
They tried with that 1-2 switch, and I think that was really Nintendo's efforts to recreate the lightning in a bottle that was Wii Sports for the Switch. It just didn't do.
Yeah.
It didn't land the same way.
They did eventually come out with the sports version, which was great.
Yeah.
It was a great game, right? If they would have just had that from the beginning, I think it would have said, hey, you can play look at all the ways you can play the Switch, including the way you played the Wii.
Yeah.
If you loved that, you can have that and so much more at a lower price than...
It is interesting that the Joy-Cons are basically Wiimotes. They're, they have
Yeah,
motion controls.
less comfortable,
but they have motion controls. You flip them on your side to play some games with them. I mean, it's basically the same thing.
Less comfortable, way more precious, right?
Oh, yes.
I mean, you drop your Switch controller and you might as well just go buy another one. And also, I think, I'll say this, one of the magic things about the Wii was you turn it on and the controller's just, you hit your button. And as long as it's got batteries,
right,
it connects and it works, right? It's just, and the Switch, one of the biggest frustrations I've had is getting everything to sync.
No, I agree.
It's like, okay, now which sequence am I in? It's like, oh, Nintendo, you made something that you should be easy.
Yeah.
You made it hard. Why, again, these are things transitionally. I've got a feeling that the successor to the Switch, I just have got a feeling it's going to bring this together and kind of synchronize all of the stuff. Maybe it's just a hope. To me, I think we always ask the question, what have we figured out? The Wii was special. It brought families together to play video games, and it wasn't, and it was a completely social, fun, innocent thing. All that said, I mean, there's something special about the Wii that when I think of video games with my family, the Wii is first, foremost, and maybe really only, other than maybe like some Tetris tournaments that I can remember that were fun.
I think we figured out that Nintendo maybe needs to dip back into their history a little bit more. There were some ideas that they had proven that they've decided for whatever reason we're done with that, and I think that may have been a mistake. So Switch 2 has not been announced yet. Maybe we've still got some time. Nintendo, I know you're listening to this podcast, so
yeah.
Miyamoto
is all over this.
Yeah, big fan of ours.
Taking notes.
Exactly. Yeah. You're right. And shout out to Miyamoto. It's glad to have you here.
How you doing?
Yeah. So bring back the Miis. That can't hurt you.
I think if Nintendo would hire us as product managers,
okay,
I think that we would. That'd be a really cool way. We could get in there and have fun with the roadmap.
I'm a little worried at having the time to do that as I'm developing all of the new Star Wars properties.
Yeah,
but we'll see. I mean, I'm open to the conversation.
Yeah, you didn't say the A word, so I guess that's okay.
No, I did not. I abided by the accord.
Yep. You said another A word though. The Accord.
Oh, I can't say that.
Close.
One.
Well,
my Honda
I ban
Accord.
all of them. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we figured it out. And folks, if you want us to figure out stuff with you, right? Reach out to us. Tell us what you're interested in. If you made it through this episode, I think that we've been recording for a few days now. I feel like this is like maybe something that that you'd record during the apocalypse. You'd have two guys rambling about the Wii as like, this is the last moments on Earth, but I want to make sure I get out this message about Wii Mario Kart. But hey, if you want to hear more stuff from us, talk to us. We love to hear from our listeners. We love to take ideas. Reach out. Check us out on our Facebook page. Just go to Facebook, type in 2 Middle-Aged Guys, and our page will come up, and you can communicate with us there. It's where we get most of our stuff, is through Facebook. Also, go to our website. We have a full website, 2 middleagedguys.com. You can email us. All of our old episodes are there. Check them out. We have other episodes about video games, if that's your thing. We hit the TurboGrafx. We hit the NES. If you love comedy, there's a couple episodes with Connor Listoka and Mike Nelson that you must listen to. It's all there. Go and find us. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, and we'd love to hear from you.
Goodbye now.